Subliminal Messages and Hidden Programming by Jade Mordito and Christina Melio. Introduction to Subliminal Messages. Recognizing the Phenomenon. Investigating the psychological process that underlie popular conspiracy theories concerning covert mind control programming and the scientific truth of claims regarding subliminal messaging. Definition of subliminal messages. Signals that are transmitted below the level of conscious awareness are known as subliminal messages, and they have the power to gradually affect a person's ideas or actions without that person being aware of it. Claims of hidden programming. Subliminal orders are allegedly frequently incorporated into media to influence people's feelings, choices, actions for commercial or political gain. Status of conspiracy theory. Documented historical occurrences, media, amplifying, and natural psychological tendencies like pattern recognition and agency detection that increase people's tendency to embrace and spread conspiracy theories all contribute to their popularity. Historical context. 1950 Origins, the Foundation Event. The Victory Experiment, 1957. Researcher James Victory stated that during a movie screening in 1957, he flashed the words, "Eat popcorn and drink Coke," for 1 out of 3,000 of a second, purportedly boosting concession sales. Early concerns that subliminal advertising might convertedly affect consumer behavior were aroused by his announcement. The fabricated results. In 1962, the Victory finally admitted that the entire operation was a scam. No real research, data, or experiments with subliminal transmission had ever been carried out. In addition to refuting his initial assertions, his admission demonstrated how readily the public and media may be swayed by unsustained scientific discoveries. The disclosure cast doubt on the accuracy of behavioral research at the time and demonstrated the power of exaggeration. Widespread public fear. Even though the claim was false, it caused a lot of people to worry about secret psychological manipulation by the media. In the end, it laid the groundwork for decades of conspiracy theories about subliminal influence in advertising, music, and television by fostering the idea that concealed signals could regulate behavior and avoid human awareness. Media obsession, 1970s to 1990s. Media sources greatly exaggerated reports of subliminal messages in music, television, and advertising between the 1970s and the 1990s, rapidly spreading rumors about backwards lyrics, concealed symbols, and covert commercial cues increased public anxiety about covert psychological manipulation and solidified subliminal messages as a popular conspiracy MK theory. Ultra connection. Historical context. The CIA's actual mind control experiments provided a factual basis that conspiracy theories later connected to subliminal messages claims despite being internally different phenomena. Real CIA experiments. MK Ultra ran from 1950s with documented evidence. Used drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture methods, not subliminal messaging, but actual coercive techniques. Public connection made. MK Ultra revelations in 1970s fed public destructive government. People began linking real CIA programs to subliminal theories, created a narrative of ongoing mass manipulation conspiracies. Public perception. Government credibility was permanently damaged, making subliminal claims seem plausible. Modern conspiracy. K Ultra became the foundation for contemporary mass media manipulation. Psychological effect. Created lasting suspicion that continues to fuel subliminal messages beliefs today. The conspiracy claim. Media. Believers claim that movies, TV shows, including Disney, advertising, music, and social media contain hidden subliminal messages. They argue that these messages appear through visuals, dialogues, symbols, or brief flashes and are designed to influence viewers without their awareness. In music, believers point to backmasking and altered frequencies, while in films and TV, they cite concealed shapes, sexual imagery, or symbolic references. Advertising is also said to use suggestive visuals or rapid frames to subtly shape perception and attention. Behavior influence. Believers claim subliminal messages can influence behavior, emotions, morality, and sexuality. They argue that hidden cues can shape spending habits, political views, emotional reactions, and even sexual attitudes or preferences through repeated subconscious exposure. Control mechanism. Believers argue that subliminal messages function as a hidden control system. These cues are said to bypass conscious awareness and influence the subconscious, allowing governments, corporations, and media creators to guide public behavior, beliefs, emotions, and values without people realizing they are being manipulated. Examples of claims: Disney hidden content. In order to supposedly corrupt young minds or normalize adult concepts through subconscious exposure, Disney artists purposefully include sexual language, phallic forms, or incident imagery in children's films. Advertising embedded images. Claims that hidden erotic faces, images, or words are incorporated into ice cubes, smoke patterns, or product textures in print and internet ads in order to subtly sway consumer decisions to buy. Real CIA experiments. MK Ultra ran from 1950s with documented evidence, used drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture methods, not subliminal messaging, but actual coercive techniques. Scientific research. Subliminal messages. A cannot force actions or decisions against will. Effects are tiny, inconsistent, and short term. Unable to manipulate complex behaviors. Greenwald's 1991 meta analysis of subliminal self help tapes found no effects beyond placebo. Drapery 1996 analysis of subliminal advertising studies found minimal and inconsistent effects. Moore 1992 comprehensive review concluded effects too weak for practical application. Duration effects faded within minutes, require specific conditions, thirst, hunger, attention. Cannot overcome strong existing preferences, ineffective against conscious resistance. Scientific consequences. No evidence for influencing voting patterns. Cannot alter fundamental beliefs or sexuality. Peer reviewed studies show minimal impact. Epley, 1999 found no evidence for subliminal influence on complex decisions in 8 controlled studies. Broyles, 2006 advertising meta analysis show effect sizes too small for commercial viability. Neuroscience studies show subliminal stimuli processed only in primary sensory cortex, not executive decision areas. American Psychological Association 1958 and Federal Trade Commission 1974 concluded insufficient evidence for subliminal advertising effectiveness. Evidence for the conspiracy.
We wanted to look at what the research actually says about subliminal messaging. Many psychological studies do show that subliminal cues can influence extremely minor and short-term mental processes. For example, studies like Barr and Kermans have shown that subliminal messages can slightly change reaction time or simple preferences, but only if the person already has a need or desire. However, the limitations are important. These effects are very weak, they disappear in seconds or minutes, and they don't change major decisions, attitudes, or behavior. Also, they only work when a person is already primed or thinking about something. When we try to apply them to everyday life, the influence almost disappears because of distractions and conflicting information. So academically, subliminal priming exists, but the effects are nowhere near the mind control claims that are popular in conspiracy theories. Now let's look at some real-world examples where subliminal messaging created public fear or controversy. One well-known case is the Judas Priest trial in 1985, where a band was accused of hiding messages in their music that supposedly caused deaths. Even though the case became a huge media story, there was no evidence that subliminal messages were intentionally placed in the music. We also see this idea in movies like The Lion King and The Little Mermaid, where people believed there were hidden inappropriate words or images. These claims became widespread even though they were never confirmed. Another example is the McDonald's Flash logo incident on a Food Network show, which made people think companies were still using subliminal ads. And finally, author Wilson Bryan Key popularized the belief that advertisers hide sexual messages to control people's desires. These events show that the fear of subliminal messaging has existed for decades, even when evidence didn't support it. This section looks at the connection between subliminal messaging and entertainment. A lot of the examples that people point to aren't actually psychological manipulation, but intentional creative decisions. Animators often include hidden Easter eggs or inside jokes in movies, especially in Disney and Pixar films. These require conscious attention to notice. We also see music backmasking, where audio is recorded backward. Bands like the Beatles or Zeppelin used backmasking for artistic purposes rather than mind control. You can't even hear these messages unless you purposefully reverse the audio. So these examples show more about creativity and symbolism than about subconscious persuasion. Now we're going to talk about evidence against the conspiracy. Here, we analyze the major claims about subliminal messages and explain why they don't hold up under scientific evidence. For Disney subliminals, most examples are either animation artifacts or jokes made by individual animators that were later removed. In the case of backmasking, multiple studies found that the brain cannot understand reverse speech subconsciously. The Judas Priest court case also concluded there is no evidence of subliminal influence. And for advertising, the research shows that extremely short visual messages generally have no effect on decision making. The brain usually processes them as noise, so when we take a scientific look at these claims, we can see that most of them fall apart. Here we look at the neuroscience side of subliminal messaging. One key point is that subliminal signals don't reach the higher order areas of the brain that are responsible for real decision making. For things like beliefs, judgments, and conscious behavior to change, the prefrontal cortex and other major brain regions have to be activated. Subliminal messages are too weak and too quick to reach those areas. There's also no scientific evidence showing that subliminal signals can change behavior on a population level. Even after years of neuroscience research, brain imaging, and psychological studies, there has been no proof of effective subliminal mind control. Some effects can happen, but they are always small and temporary. Another important point is that the brain itself filters out weak, meaningless, or short signals. Our sensory systems block out most of the information the brain receives, which means subliminal cues get rejected before they can even be processed. The pie chart helps show this visually. About 75% of brain processing is conscious processing, 20% is automatic responses, and only about 4% is subliminal. And that 4% is not enough to influence complex decision making. So, from a neuroscience perspective, the brain simply doesn't allow subliminal messages to change our decisions, beliefs, or behavior. Our evaluation and conclusion. Subliminal messages can produce small and temporary effects, but they do not control people's behavior. Conspiracy theories often exaggerate these effects and claim that governments, media, or companies can influence us without our awareness, but there is no credible proof of that. Most famous examples are misunderstandings, coincidences, or myths that spread online. Even historical experiments like MK Ultra only show how fear drives conspiracy theories, not that subliminal messaging works. So the scientific conclusion is that subliminal messaging is not a tool for mass mind control. So, to answer the main question, should we believe in subliminal messaging conspiracy? The evidence suggests that we shouldn't. Subliminal cues can influence small, short-term responses in controlled settings, but there is no strong proof that they can influence large-scale behavior. Most of the popular cases, such as the Vicary popcorn experiment, the Judas Priest trial, and Disney examples, are either misinterpreted, exaggerated, or proven false. Overall, the fear around subliminal messaging comes more from misunderstanding and media influence than from real science. So the idea of using subliminal signals for mind control is unsupported and should be viewed as skepticism. Thank you for listening to our presentation.